Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe the world revolves around them and nobody else matters. And in today's episode, holy moly, guys, I know I say this a lot, but you'll be shaking your heads extra in this one. We've got Karens throwing tantrums in stores, trying to parent other people's toddlers, stealing breast milk from daycares. Guys, it's absolutely bonkers in this one. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So I used to work at a little convenience store in a very small town. Every customer was basically a regular. I had this one kid who was about 12 years old. He came every school day on his bike. He bought a chocolate milk and a thing of cheese crackers every day. The total at the time was $2.08 after tax, and the kid always paid in change, like it came out of his piggy bank. So one day, he came in with a look on his face that said he had a really bad day. He shuffled through the store and he grabbed his usual, but he was short 10 cents. He went to put his crackers up, and that's when I pulled a dime out of my pocket. I smiled at him, saying he's all good and to enjoy his snack. The kid thanked me, and he left looking quite a bit happier. The next customer was a regular as well, but he was a man in his 40s wanting his usual pack of cigarettes. I ring him up and tell him the total, and that's when he smiles and says, "Well, aren't you paying for it?" Of course, I tell him no. The guy then proceeds to yell at me, saying if I'm buying customer stuff, that I should pay for his cigarettes. Meanwhile, there's a line of customers behind him that saw what happened with the kid. I tell him there's a huge difference between helping a kid who's slightly short 10 cents for an after-school snack versus a full-grown man trying to force a woman to buy his smokes. And oh my goodness, he starts yelling at me about favoritism and how this is gonna get reported to my managers. I just look him in the eyes and I tell him, yeah, and then what? He then proceeds to yell insults at me before I simply grab his cigarettes and put them back on the shelf. The guy then goes, "What are you doing? I'm buying those." To which I respond, "Not today, and not from me, please leave." At that, he reaches across the counter for me when I step back. Now, it's also important to note that I was about 7 months pregnant at the time, and stepping back revealed my pregnant belly. I'm short, so the counter typically hid this feature. Now, I wasn't doing it to reveal anything, I was getting out of reach. The customers behind him start to almost riot about him attacking a pregnant woman for helping a kid. And this one big, scary-looking guy in line actually got into his face and told him to get the hell out of the store. Long story short, the guy was no longer a regular. He vowed to never come back after that. He left in a huff, and every customer behind him started this after-school snack fund for the kid. It started with the big guy putting an extra $1 on the counter for the kid, and it just kept going until I set a jar. The kid had free chocolate milk for almost a month before I went on mat leave. Guys, what a wholesome ending to that post. And seriously, one thing that never surprises me when reading these stories is the amount of people who try to get something for absolutely nothing. Like OP said, there's a difference between shelling out 10 cents for a child who's short money for milk, and paying what, 10 bucks for a pack of cigarettes for a grown man? I don't know how much cigarettes cost, but you get the point, right? And the fact that he got aggressive with OP just makes him an even worse human being. With that said, kudos to that big guy in line who put that idiot in his place. I would have loved to have been there to see it, because there's nothing more satisfying than entitled idiots getting put in their place by massive, scary-looking people. I have a second-hand shop in my house. Prices are cheap, and usually folks are nice and sweet. But there's this one lady who gets on everyone's nerves. To her, everything is an emergency. Her kids need pants, she needs shirts, her husband doesn't have whatever. The list goes on and on. The woman always comes at 4:15 p.m. when her kids come home from school. I always tell her it's not a good time, as the hours are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. 2 times a week. I tell her, please don't come after 3:30 because you won't have time to look. But the woman doesn't care though. She's always saying, but it's an emergency. My blah 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 needs this. Now, because she's standing at my door, knocking loudly, sometimes for several minutes, I do let her in, and I know it's my fault. So the day this happened, she was with her 4 kids. Since it's after school, they're hungry, tired, and obnoxious. The woman's taking her time looking at everything I have in stock. Meanwhile, she's letting her kids run around my house, looking through my cabinets, asking me for food. 2 boys run into my kitchen, and they take my broom and mop. They then head to the living room and they take stuff off the top shelf of my bookshelves. That's when I say, "Excuse me, these are not toys. You don't have permission to take anything that's not on the shop shelves." The mom, while looking at something, slowly says, "Boys, put those things back. You heard her." To which, of course, they ignore. So I tell them they need to go outside. My daughter's playing nicely by herself with a doll and a doll stroller. One of this woman's girls wants to play with the stroller and the doll, but not with my daughter. So she pulls the doll from my daughter's hands and they begin to argue. My daughter says, "I don't want to share my dollies today." I respect my daughter's decision. If she doesn't want to share, she doesn't have to. And this is when the lady goes Karen. The woman kneels down beside my daughter and she tells her, "You are big, so you can be big and let my daughter play with your toys. She needs to play with them to keep her busy. I'm not finished here." She then went to pull the doll out of my daughter's hands, and that's when I raised my voice and said, "Hey, my daughter said no. You need to listen to what she says." That's when Karen says, "But she's young. She doesn't have an opinion. My daughter doesn't have a stroller and she wants to play." I just respond, "I'm sorry your 2-year-old doesn't have a stroller, but my daughter said not today. Don't make her feel bad because she made a choice you don't agree with." So yeah, this happens about once a week. The lady comes in, tells her kids it's okay to tear up my house and to bully my daughter. I had to make a rule that no kids are allowed to come. I'm not your free babysitter. Okay, I think everyone will agree when I say that OP should ban that woman from her store. Like, why does OP keep letting her come into her home once a week? She needs to ban that rude, inconsiderate woman from ever coming back. And another thing, good on OP for standing her ground when her daughter did not want to share, because a lot of times parents will take stuff from their kids and force them to share. But seriously, like, what a piece of crap move that Karen tried to pull by taking the doll from OP's kid and then saying to OP that her daughter's young and doesn't have an opinion. OP is seriously too nice. Like, try that in someone else's house, Karen, and I'm pretty sure sooner or later a mama bear is gonna show you the door real quick, and that's putting it gently. As a precursor, I'm a nanny. And the boy I nanny is 18 months and he loves swimming, so I took him to a water park resort that has day passes. Now this particular water park has an entire section devoted to kids 3 and under. There's no water past 1 foot deep, lots of small animals that spit water, splash pads, and sensory places everywhere. You get the gist, and the kid also won't drown because there's lifeguards everywhere. So in his bag, I have this bottle of milk for his middle of the day nap. There are chairs right next to a big window for nap purposes. This way, he can sleep and I'll be comfy. His afternoon nap is an hour and a half, so I downloaded a movie and I brought headphones so we can resume after. The people at the food service were super nice and they let people warm up bottled milk for no charge. Again, super kid-friendly place. So here I am, going to my chair and warming up the bottle, and the little man is wrapped in a towel with the bottle. And here comes Karen, the entitled person. She walks up to me and says, "You know, this place is really kid-friendly. You can breastfeed here, see? Other women are doing it." I say to her, "Oh, it's okay. We've cut breastfeeding out. He started to like the bottle more, so we said, why not?" Hearing me say that, Karen says, "But breastfeeding is so much healthier. Why don't you do it? Do you want your baby to have developmental problems or get sick often? It's very easily prevented with breastfeeding, you know. And I hope you got all his shots up to date, because if you're not breastfeeding or having shots done, he's going to have health issues. This poor boy deserves better." I just tell the Karen I'm his nanny. I don't make decisions. I just do what the parents tell me. It's at this point the little man says, "Cookie, cookie." I tell him, "No cookie, it's nap time." The boy's persistent though, and he keeps saying, "No, cookie, cookie." And then he does his little please and thank you in sign language. So I then take out a cookie and give it to him. as he can eat a small one before going down for a nap. And that's when the woman goes full Karen and she starts berating me. She says, what kind of parent lets their nanny feed their child cookies and doesn't let them take a nap, let alone doesn't breastfeed? I tell her he's 18 months and he's excited about his new surroundings. He'll take a nap in the car, and I can't breastfeed him. I didn't give birth to him or recently have a baby, so I'm not a wet nurse or cow. And he always gets a cookie after lunch. Hearing me say that, Karen's appalled and she says, what's your employer's phone number? I have to speak with her because you aren't doing your job properly. If you were my nanny, I would fire you in a heartbeat. I say to her, okay, 1, that's private information. You're not getting my employer's number. And 2, ma'am, nothing I'm doing is wrong. I'm doing what the parents instructed me to do, so leave us alone. This is when Karen grabs the nearest desk employee that was grabbing towels, and she says, I need this patron's information. She's not being appropriate with the child she's in charge with, and I need to speak with her employer. The employee just tells her, I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't give that to you, and she would be the one to give it to you. I don't have any of that information. Karen then says, then I want her kicked out. Other parents can't be seeing people who aren't breastfeeding a baby. I'm going to find a manager. The woman then stalks towards her husband, where he looks at me and gives her money, and then stomps away. Her husband then comes over to me and says, hey, I'm really sorry about her. She works with an agency that specializes in women and infant care as a breastfeeding specialist. And yeah, I know it's not much, but I can get you guys ice cream if you want for your troubles. I tell him, no, it's not a problem, but I think you should speak with her supervisor and have them talk to her about leaving her work at work. If I had been a mom who couldn't breastfeed for a medical reason, or if I was someone who didn't want to breastfeed, this could have gotten pretty ugly. The husband then says, oh, it's happened before, I know. Thanks for understanding. Have a nice day. So yeah, that's the end of that. Yeah, so I think if you were to list out the most entitled a-hole-ish things that people can do, I'm certain that trying to parent someone else's child would be pretty up there on the list. Like, keep your opinions to yourself, lady. And like Opie said, you never know why parents are doing what they're doing, so it's best to keep quiet until you're asked for an opinion. And the fact that her husband said this has happened before, oh my goodness, that poor man. Like, I wonder how many situations he's had to diffuse because his wife just went off on some unsuspecting stranger. And this person comments, I hate that people push their opinions on others. Like, shut the F up, Karen. No one gives a damn what you think. Ain't that the truth? And guys, while we're on the topic of breastfeeding infants, oh boy, this next one, buckle up, because it's about to get wild. So I work in a daycare, and I have many stories where I have to deal with entitled people. This story happened a while ago, and it sticks out the most. Here we have what I like to call breast milk Karen. The daycare I work at, as most daycares do, allow moms to bring in their own breast milk, and we have a fridge to store it in. Of course, all breast milk has to come with labels, and they will have their own place in the fridge, so it doesn't get mixed up, of course. So one day during drop-off, I had just been given a bag of bottles of breast milk by a mother, dropping off her baby. As I go to head to the kitchen, I hear the sound of Karen screaming my name. Now, one thing to note is that this woman was widely known by the staff, and she was widely disliked. The woman comes marching up to me, and the conversation starts off with her complaining about the location of our school field trip for the kids. The kids voted where they wanted to go, and they voted the park. Well, Karen wasn't happy about it for some reason because she didn't want her son getting too much sun exposure. I tell her what I told her before. The kids picked where they want to go, and most kids wanted to go to the park, including her son. I can't change it. I then offered a solution of putting extra sunscreen on her kid and making sure he's well covered, just saying things to ease her mind. The woman was happy until she notices the bag in my hand, and this is where it became insane. Karen says to me, what's in the bag? I say, oh, this is breast milk that one of the other mothers left with us. I was about to put it in the fridge. Karen then says, well, that's a lot of breast milk for one baby. I say to her, yeah, the mom wants to make sure we keep a good stock here, so we always have some for her son. Karen just looks at me and says, so you must have plenty then. I say to her, I guess. She then says, so you can give me some for my son. I've heard really good things about breast milk. I respond, your son, Billy? Karen says, yes. And I say, but he's 5. Karen says, it doesn't matter what age he is. I read online that feeding your kids breast milk is good for them, so give me one of those bottles. The woman actually reaches her hand out for the bottle, and I pull the bag back and say, I'm sorry, but these belong to another mother. They're not mine to give away. Karen then says, oh, I'm sure she wouldn't mind. You said she has plenty. Look, I'll pour out my coffee cup and you can empty the bottle in here. She won't even notice. Just tell her that her son was extra hungry or something. I tell her, that's not gonna happen, ma'am. I cannot give you someone else's breast milk. Please sign in your son and go. It's at this point, Karen starts raising her voice at me and says, this is ridiculous. People like her make the milk naturally anyways. She probably has a lot at home. So why don't you I just stop her right there and I say, I will not ask again, ma'am. If you want some breast milk, go ask someone. This is not yours to take. She then responds with, well, what a stupid rule you have at this daycare. They shouldn't be able to take this stuff in if they're not gonna share it with other kids. My son just wants to try it, so give me a bottle. Here's my cup. It ends right there because I just walk away at that point. My director did ask me what happened with her as she heard Karen huffing and puffing and getting upset at me. I told her what happened and her head just about exploded. She couldn't comprehend that Karen would get so angry when denied someone else's breast milk for her 5-year-old son. But this isn't all. We caught Karen raiding the milk fridge in our kitchen 2 days later when she thought nobody was around, and it did not end well. Let's just say her and her son had to find a different daycare. You know, the stuff that some people do completely baffles me sometimes. Like, I can't believe that Karen resorted to thievery. And it clearly ended with her being known as the crazy lady who raided a frickin' fridge at a daycare to steal breast milk. And be honest, guys, let me know your thoughts on this one, but to me, it doesn't seem right to give your child somebody else's breast milk. And I know a lot of people are thinking, but we drink cow's milk and goat's milk. And that is true, but again, something about a mother wanting to feed her 5-year-old son some stranger's breast milk just seems really odd to me. With that said though, if Karen did some Googling, she would have found out that you can get breast milk from donors at hospitals and stuff, and her son might still be at that daycare. There was no need to go raiding a fridge to steal breast milk, Karen. And while we're on the topic of daycares, the next OP tells a story about his new neighbor that moved in. Listen to this one. So, a story that you read a few days ago reminded me of this. About 3 months ago, we had some new neighbors move in, and they started a daycare out of their home. Now, the kids really haven't been as much of an issue as I was expecting, aside from some occasional noise. The parents, on the other hand, oh goodness, the parents. It all started with this one dude who, let's call him Jim. The thing about Jim is he liked to park in our driveway. That wasn't really an issue at first, as he was only there for a few minutes, and my roommate works in the mornings, so his car isn't there. However, my roommate switched to an evening shift about a month in, and his beat-up car proudly took up his half of the driveway. Now, Jim did not like this. No, he didn't. There was a car in his parking spot, so he honked and he made lots of noise, much to the shame of his 2 young boys. Now me, not being effing insane, went outside to see who was honking in front of our house at 8 o'clock in the morning. Cue this exchange. Jim says to me, "You're in my spot." To which I say, this is my driveway. You can park in the street if you need to drop off your kids. He then says, "Don't you tell me what to do. Move your car. You're in my spot. I've parked here every day for a month." I just tell him, "Alright, hold on. My keys are inside." At this point, I just went inside and I told my roommate what's going on. About a minute goes by and Jim, the patient and considerate soul he was, begins honking again. We decide to ignore him and we just make oatmeal. After a while, the honking stopped and we assumed that was that. But oh, how wrong we were. 2 days go by with no signs of Jim. Our neighbors brought us an apology pie, which was delicious. They'd apparently told him to not park in our driveway when he started doing it, but he told them that we said it was fine. We had never talked to him before the first incident. So on day 3, I'm awoken by a delightful noise of honking. I look outside, and it's Jim. My neighbors come outside and start talking to him, and the guy's still honking. His kids see what's about to happen, exit stage left. So I come outside along with my roommate, and Jim loses it. He's screaming at us, "You need to get out of my spot." He says that while honking at the same time, and my roommate says, "No, not today, crazy." He then proceeds to honk like 20 times, and that's when my roommate says, "I'm gonna call the cops." I say to him, tell them to bring a straitjacket and a fancy padded van, and maybe a tow truck. At this point, Jim at least stopped honking. You'd think he was trying to seduce a goose. He then flipped us off and drove away, which was hysterical since we live in a cul-de-sac and he had to do this awkward 3-point turn before leaving. The police sent a squad car and we gave them what information we had. They also talked to the neighbors, as well as doing a wellness check on Jim's kids, who mostly just seemed embarrassed. They offered to send someone out next morning and we agreed, since we were tired of the noise. The next day, Jim shows up in his ugly sedan. The guy sat in his car and he began honking again. But this time, what a joy, justice prevailed. Jim got arrested and now he has to pay bail. It turns out he had a warrant for his arrest for something else. I heard he assaulted a cashier or something, but I'm not sure how true that is. The mom picked the kids up from daycare and she didn't demand to park in our driveway. We haven't seen them since, and I know he's out of jail since the cops told us to call if he shows up and starts doing his goose impression again. But so far, there's no sign of him. Oh, I love that Jim got arrested and sent to jail that day. Totally deserved for being that big of an a-hole. Like, how self-entitled do you have to be to demand somebody move their car off their own driveway so you can have that spot? Serves him right. And here's something else. If you've committed a crime and you have a warrant out for your arrest, maybe don't attract that much attention to yourself. And this person in the comments shares their story, and it's absolutely amazing. We don't own a car and we live at the end of a cul-de-sac. I have people use my driveway all the time to turn around. It's not a huge deal to me, but it is a little annoying when they compact the snow and it's harder to shovel, but whatever. One of my neighbors has a ride service come to pick up their child every day. The van would park in my spot and it would begin honking at like 8 o'clock. Half the time, he'd be half parked on my grass. I told my neighbor that I don't overly mind my spot being used, but not if he's gonna honk like that every morning, and especially if he's going to drive over what lawn I have every time. She spoke with him and he ignored it. I spoke with him and I got, "What's your problem, man? It's not like you're using it." To which I repeated that I don't mind him using it if he stays off my grass and he doesn't honk every morning. Now, apparently, suggesting he wait till the kid notices that he's there, or God forbid, he have to drag his ass out of the car to knock on the door, was just ridiculous and inhumane of me. So I left a recycle bin at the foot of my driveway, and the guy just ran over it. I called the dispatch for the ride service and was told they're subcontractors and they're technically self-employed, but they will pass along the message. I wake up next day to pounding on my door and the dude is pissed. He screams at me and says, "How dare you call my boss, you stupid piece of crap? What the F is wrong with you?" I tell him, well, it's quite simple. You were told not to use my driveway if you were going to drive on my lawn and wake me up every morning. Now get off my doorstep. He then says, "I'll sue you if I lose my job because of you." To which I say, "You've been warned. Do not trespass on my driveway or property again." The dude storms off in a huff, spouting obscenities, etc. So this happened on a Thursday, and the kids have a day off the next day. And it's supposed to be one of those delightful Canadian weekends where it drops to like minus 40 degrees Celsius. For my American friends, minus 40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet up, so it's frickin' cold. So that night, I grab one of my more beat up plastic garbage bins, and I make sure to plug up all the holes with a generous amount of duct tape. I then stuck a sign on it that read, "Private property, driveway not for public use," and then proceed to fill it to the brim with water. Now, before anyone thinks that I'm a jerk who's willing to potentially endanger the other kids in the car, I would like to point out that my neighbor's kid is the first to be picked up, so it's just him in the car. So cue Monday morning. The guy sees the garbage can and he backs up a bit more and he defiantly charges the garbage can, as if to teach me a lesson, and he proceeds to cause some pretty serious damage to the front end of his car. Of course, the dude gets out fuming. He calls the cops and comes pounding on my door, screaming how I'm gonna buy him a new car and that I'm about to be arrested. So the cops come and the cop says, "So let me make sure I understand this situation. He asked you to not park here if you couldn't refrain from honking. Then he warned you to not park here and he put up a barrier. Now you expect him to be charged and pay for damages that you caused yourself to your vehicle in an attempt to destroy his own personal property. Are you stupid?" And I will never forget the look on his face when the officer said to him, "Yeah, that's not how this works." He then turns to me and asked if I wanted to pursue charges for him damaging my personal property. I just gave him the most crap-eating grin I could muster, and I said, "No, I think we're good." I then went back inside to enjoy a morning coffee while watching him from my kitchen window, as the guy paces back and forth in the cold, waiting for a tow truck. Oh, and the best part is, he had to call the company he worked for to explain why they need to send out another driver to complete his route. The guy ended up losing his job. This is such satisfying instant karma, guys. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And the best part is, the guy did it all to himself. He damaged his own car, and it was his own fault he lost his job. So he only has himself to blame. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's in r/malicious compliance, where teachers get absolutely destroyed. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.